Hey, good evening. Welcome back to nationalhsfb.com. I'm your host, Larry Godwin, my counterpart, Joe Mamone, and we've got a guest with us tonight. He's no stranger to the show, been with us before, but we wanted to have him on tonight because Coach Jason Negro, the head coach of the St. John Bosco Braves. Coach, I'm going to use this word. It may not have shocked you, but it did kind of shock the football world out there. Not that you beat one of your rivals in Mater Dei, but the way that you handled that football game and dominated, really. So congratulations and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Larry and Joe. Appreciate you having me on here. And, talking a little bit of high school football on a Sunday night could never be a wrong time, especially after a big weekend that we had, in our program and our school community. It's just a pleasure to be a part of your program.
Absolutely. Joe, why don't you kick us off with this questioning?
So, Coach, congrats again. A lot to be thankful for. Number one, great victory. The way you did it, I mean, it's first time I read since 2011, I think, that Mater Dei was shut out. Mm-hmm. And people don't know, you didn't just win at the varsity level. You won at the JV and the freshman levels too, which is huge.
Yeah, anytime you have an opportunity to play somebody of Mater Dei's caliber, we're pretty fortunate. We get to do it every single year. So that's something that's exciting for our community. And it's such a great rivalry between the two schools and the two programs. But I was really pleased and really impressed with the approach that we had taken to the week from the freshman kids, in junior varsity and the varsity kids. You have really took, the ownership of wanting to make this rivalry something special, and they prepared really hard. We have a pretty tight-knit, close community. We're a smaller school. Many people may not know, being an all-boys school of about 800 students. So it takes a lot of pride to be a part of our organization and what we're trying to accomplish there. And for us to be able to go out there and win at the freshman level, the JV level, and ultimately the one that matters the most at the varsity level certainly brings a lot of pride to our school community, the alumni, all the students that are on campus. And there's a lot of people will tell you the fall season of the school year typically goes how football goes. So when you're having a successful football season, the rest of school just kind of is uplifted, and Bosco is certainly no stranger to that.
Coach, there's obviously rivalries all across the country. Now, everybody recognizes in the football world the name St. John Bosco and Mater Dei, but we may not be as familiar with that rivalry out there. How big of a rivalry is it between you guys and the Monarchs?
I think it's as big as, any rivalry that's out there in the country. I mean, and I think it's rivalry right now, at least at the height of it, because we're at the height, in my opinion. I've been at Bosco for 14 years now, and that program has been pretty stable. Bruce was there for 30 something years, and Coach McManus has taken over now. And, not a lot has changed. He's kept everything pretty much intact. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And in terms of, the rivalry and things like that, it's pretty large. I saw something over the internet this weekend, prior to the game, where somebody posted like the best college atmospheres, in every state going into the weekend. And in the corner of California, they had St. John Bosco as one of the atmospheres that you wanted to be a part of. And we're being, compared to the collegiate, type programs in Alabamas and Georgias and all those great programs down there in Florida. So I think it's pretty big. I mean, Gatorade did a national commercial about rivalries. And 2 years ago, the New York Times came out 2 years ago and did a piece from their sports edition of the New York Times about the rivalry between St. John Bosco as well as Mater Dei. And then we are also in Sports Illustrated. So it's a pretty big rivalry. I think when you have some of the hottest news organizations and media outlets that are covering our game, all the local news, Bally's went national with the game. It was a pretty special moment for us to be a part of. And I got to thank them for adding to that, because they equally share as much responsibility in this rivalry as we do.
And Larry, I went last year. Coach was gracious enough. He allowed me, from the time the kids got out of school through the whole game and after the game, he gave me full access to see what the day in the life of this game was.
Wow.
And we had a great experience, and if you get a chance, like you always talk about Valdosta Lowndes and McKinley and Maslin, all these things that have been, these rivalries that have been going on for, close to 100 years, whatever. I mean, this is one you got to check out eventually. It was eye-opening to me, and all of our peers in the industry are there. I mean, I wasn't there this year, but all the other pollsters were there on the sidelines. It's a can't miss game for those who love the sport. So hopefully we'll get you out there soon. Hey, Coach.
What makes it kind of special is, our kids are all very familiar with each other. Although
Mm-hmm.
LA, Southern California is a very big area. The schools are only separated by 20 something miles. It's a quick, way to get there. We compete in almost everything, obviously all basketball, we're real competitive with them as well. The other sports on campus, all the male sports, obviously we don't have girls, but from the male sports, we compete really heavily with them. The kids a lot of times are deciding, do I go to St. John Bosco? Do I go to Mater Dei? And all of these kids are, some of them coming off of the same, youth, Pop Warner, 7-on-7 teams, where are we going to go? And half the kids are going to choose Mater Dei, and maybe the other half are going to choose Bosco. And that just creates natural rivalries as well. And people, are going to jump on either side of the fence. So it's pretty special in our state, in the greater Los Angeles, Orange County area. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Hey, Coach, when we were together, remember in Fort Lauderdale, I came down for that Broward event,
right?
And you were playing St. Thomas Aquinas, and when we were talking privately, we were talking about Mater Dei, and we were talking about your team, and I know you and I didn't think they were going to lose this year. I know I didn't, because you know why? Because they were so experienced and had so much coming back,
right?
And conversely, you're the opposite. This is one of your youngest teams. So tell me, in your opinion, tell me what happened? Perfect storm? Just tell me, in your opinion, what happened those 2.5 hours?
Well, I think there was a lot that goes into it. First of all, you're working with the mentality and the psyche of high school students. And, they're unpredictable. As we all know, those of us that are in the education world, that kids are unpredictable. You just never know what's going to happen and whose night it is. I think you can look to a lot of different factors that went into this. And I think if you try to focus on one of them and say, okay, this is the reason why, Bosco was able to be as, dominant in that win as we were, you're going to be incorrect, because there is really nothing that can tell. I think just from a mentality standpoint, who knows? I just know that we played a really good football game. We were really solid in all three phases. We were highly prepared. Our kids did not make a ton of mistakes. And quite honestly, on their side, it wasn't like a turnover fest or, bad plays, or the officials got involved to where it kind of swayed it either way. I think calls went both ways and evened everything out. But I think, it's really, really hard to go number one in the country and to win all of the games at which they had to in a row. And then they just came up against somebody who was just a little bit hotter that night. And I think that's all you got to chalk it up to, because you just never know. And I think the one area that we kind of look at as, maybe this is the one, is we did have two comparable scores, but again, if you look at the comparable scores against the two opponents, they kind of handled Kahuku very well when Kahuku was out here, but there was a lot of factors as to why that happened. And then the next week we go out to Hawaii, and then, we have a lead late in the ball game, 2.5 minutes or so to go, and they were able to go down and score and beat us. So I think everybody looked at that and said, oh my gosh, these guys are, Mater Dei is going to blow the doors off of Bosco. But you can't compare scores at high school. It's impossible. And the reason why I say that is because a couple of weeks earlier, we played St. Francis and handled them pretty easily, I would think, or in my opinion, I thought we handled them pretty well. We beat them 37-14, something like that. It was a 20-point gap in the score. However, Mater Dei goes out to Maryland a couple weeks later, and that was a ball game. Mater Dei didn't score an offensive touchdown until
38 seconds left.
Right.
38 seconds until they scored an offensive touchdown.
Correct. So if you look at that, although they won that game, had Mater Dei had lost that game, well, then you could throw all theories out the window.
Yeah.
But again, they're high school students. Mater Dei, obviously had, who knows what was going on their week of practice or their week of preparation as well. So there's just too much to try to put your thumb on one thing to say this was the reason. At the end of the day, it was two really good high school football teams. And if you played 10 times, it might go 5-5.
Right. Hey, Larry, when I was in Baltimore for the Mater Dei game, I'm texting him. I'm saying, are you seeing this? He's not even watching. So I'm like, Coach, he's like, what's the score? And I'm telling him everything that's happening. And so, Coach, did you see anything from that game film that helped you prepare?
Well, one thing I know is St. Francis was excellent on defense that night. I mean, I thought they did a phenomenal job. You know, Coach Messe does such a great job preparing his guys. And one of the things that was an advantage to him was he was finally at home. You know, when he had to lose those games on the road. There's nobody in the country that had to do. People are gonna hate on St. Francis. That's the absolute wrong thing to do. What that guy has done with that program and what they had to try to accomplish just to play games this year should be celebrated, not criticized. Because I am so impressed with how they even came out and played us and what they had to do. Being at home, being in your own bed, being in your own time zone gives you a distinct advantage. And I think for Mater Dei to go out there, it's a challenge. It's hard to go play those guys on the road and, you know, in a different environment, just like it was hard for us to go to Florida and it was hard for us to go out to Hawaii 2 weeks later. So I just think that what St. Francis did, if they had a little bit more, a little bit better execution offensively, because they had some really good, big, explosive plays.
The first play of the game, they should have scored a touchdown. The kid, it's a 80-yard pass. He's running to the end zone and he fumbles. Nobody even hit him on the 15-yard line.
Right. It fell out of his hands. And I think there was a play later where they had a guy wide open, overthrown. And then Mater Dei had 2 opportunistic defensive touchdowns. They had a scoop and score and a pick 6. So when you look at it, that's why I say, you got to treat each and every one of these events as its own isolated moment. You can't sit there and say, well, I'm going to compare what Bosco did 4 weeks ago to Kahuku versus what Mater Dei did. If you get into that type of mindset, there's going to have some doubt, or they're going to have overconfidence kind of set in. And then now, you're going to have maybe potentially a lopsided game. So who knows? And again, I'll chalk it up. I've been a head coach for 21 years and never once have I experienced a Kahuku, and never once have I experienced what we experienced Friday night at Mater Dei. So, I mean, go figure.
Coach, your only blemish, as we talked about Kahuku, your only blemish has been to those guys out in Hawaii. This is what Greg Biggins wrote on 24/7 Sports. He said the Monarchs were favored coming in to the season, ranked number 1 in just about every preseason poll, and those odds increased dramatically when Bosco was upset by Kahuku 30-23 just a week after Mater Dei beat the Red Raiders 55-8. What was the mood of the team after that loss, and especially going into the game with Mater Dei?
Highly disappointed. I mean, I think that's where you have to start. We have a standard that we have set at St. John Bosco, and we put goals in place for us, and we break the season down into 3 phases. And the first phase is the non-league phase. And although it is highly challenging, I think Max Preps ranked us as the toughest, or the second toughest behind St. Francis schedule, or the entire schedule in the country. So we knew it was going to be challenging to go 5-0, and that was our goal. And we were, like I said, 2 minutes and 30 seconds away from accomplishing that with the football, and we weren't able to, close the door and finish it. So we were highly disappointed because we fell short of what we put out there in terms of our expectations and what our standard is for our program. So, that was hard. And the hardest part about it was we had to come back and have a bye week. And, so you had to live with it for an additional 7 days. All we wanted to do was get back out there on the field. But what it also allowed us to do is kind of hit the reset button, realize that our ultimate goals are still intact. That's to potentially win the Trinity League, win a CIF championship, win a state title. And if you can do all those things, beating, which we knew Mater Dei was going to be a part of that, possibly you have an opportunity to throw your hat in the ring for the mythical national championship. So that our goals are still intact. And like Joe said, I think a second ago, that I think we're rose to number 1 in 2 different polls nationally. And if we continue to build on this body of work, who knows what happens at the end of the season. But I just know that we're playing some really good football teams, and we got some really good ones ahead of us, and we got to take it a week by week approach.
Coach, I've been waiting to ask this question all night. As a pollster, I love that these days there's so much commingling. Everybody's playing each other. It's great. So my next question is, and please be honest, in your opinion, who's the best team you've played this season?
Ooh, good question.
Well, I still think it's Mater Dei, without question.
I thought maybe you'd give some STA credit there.
Yeah, well, and I was going to continue. I still think that the potential there, that Mater Dei is still the best roster, extremely well coached, it was just not their night on Friday, and so I'm going to kind of chalk that up and I'm going to choose my words carefully because I could potentially see them down the road if we're fortunate enough to get to them. But what Coach Harriet does, and that's was going to be my follow-up to that. However, I got to give a big, strong potential nod to Thomas Aquinas, because I think had we have played them now, that game would be even tighter, because we got them and it was their opening game of the season. They didn't play a scrimmage, they did an inter squad, but we just got them on a good day. And they battled us, tooth and nail the entire night down there. It was a challenge for us to go to Florida, no doubt. So that factored into it a little bit, maybe kept it a little closer than at the time it should have been, because we left some points out there in the red zone we couldn't convert on. But Thomas Aquinas is right there. I gotta say, from a physicality standpoint and athleticism standpoint, their roster is built very similar to what they had there at Mater Dei as well. But right now, if I had to give an edge, I would probably say Mater Dei is still a little bit, ahead of them in terms of, if you're talking the best team that we have played to this point.
And Coach, as a pollster, your victory on Friday helped Aquinas move up this week too.
Right. As it should.
It's all related. It's all related.
Thomas Aquinas is a fine football program. I mean, they got some talent. They were 4-time in a row state champs. Doesn't happen by accident. And what's so impressive about that is every year, like last year's team that won the national title undisputed for us in 22, we lost 33 seniors, 20 of which went to play Division I football. So to replace that roster and to come back and to be sitting in the position that we're in right now, which we're, 7-1, and just beat the number 1 ranked team in the country and sitting at 3-0 in the Trinity League, beating St. Francis, beating Liberty, beating Thomas Aquinas. Man, I tell you what, for us to flip that roster and still have the ability to go and do that, got to give my kids and my program, a lot of credit for being able to, be in this position that we're in now.
So I got a question on defense. Did I hear that you don't have one senior starting on D?
Right. Not currently. No, not on defense. Our defensive line is very young. We have one senior that kind of, comes into the program and has helped us. He was a transfer kid that had to sit the first 5 weeks. Right. So prior to him becoming eligible, we were playing nothing but, underclassmen there. We got 2 underclassmen in the secondary, and our linebacker group is a veteran group. But the front end, the back end, very young football team, offensive line wise, 4/5 of those guys are underclassmen. So we got a lot of tools around us that hopefully are going to, be able to come to maturity as we go through this season and playing at the highest level, when the time counts most.
Coach, I'm going to ask you about your defense, because I'm glad Joe asked that question. It's a great lead into this one. Zach Poff from Max Preps writes that St. John Bosco's Open Trinity League play 3-0, outscoring opposition 126-34. Coach, that's a lot of scoring, but talk about how good your defense is playing as well.
I mean, our defense is playing lights out right now. I could not be more proud. So we played 3 games. We gave up 7 to Santa Margarita in the opener. And then we gave up, the scoreboard says 27, against Servite, but I think that game was like 56-14 at one point and then we started, putting some, you start playing to the scoreboard a little bit. And again, not taking any credit away from Servite and what they were able to accomplish. They scored on a trick play early in the game. And then they scored on some reserves toward the latter part of the game. However, the shutout over Mater Dei was probably a little bit more, in alignment of who we are defensively and what we're capable of doing and accomplishing if we just do our jobs, be a part of, the scheme and not try to deviate too far from that as an individual player. And we are pretty good, on the defensive side of the ball, but our offense is starting to get better week in and week out. And that's what's so encouraging to me. And reason why I said in one of the post-game interviews, it's scary to see how good we can be if we continue to trend in this direction.
Coach, I just looked it up here. So your totals are, hang on a minute. You're almost more than 2-1. It's right. Points for 296, points against 119.
Right.
296, 119. Great number.
No, it's big. And you got to also, if you were to actually look at those numbers, that there's a little bit of it, they're skewed a little bit because We obviously threw a pick six in the Servite game. We threw a pick six in the Kahuku game. So that's obviously, 14 points,
Yep.
that you can deduct that from our defense. Against Liberty, they returned a kickoff for a touchdown and returned another one inside the 5. We had some special teams problems in that first Liberty game. So that's another 14 points. So you could potentially evaporate 28 points from that total of 119. And, that's a little bit more realistic assessment of what we do. If you look at the balance of the football games that the starters are in, or those guys that are the frontline, guys that are getting the bulk of the playing time, I think it's a little bit different. But again, I don't really look too much at the points for, points against. At the end of the day, we just need to win football games. And I want to see that we're putting a quality effort, forward as we're doing that.
Well, Coach, in this modern day of high scoring offenses, your defense is giving up about 11 points a game. I think you're going to win a few games with that kind of average there.
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, those guys are highly motivated. They take a lot of pride in doing what they're doing. The last year team, the 2022 team, set such a high standard in terms of what the expectations were for our defense. And those guys that have moved on and are now in college, they don't have a problem reminding our kids that are currently in our program, because all of those text threads are still there where they remind them, hey, fellas, you know what the expectations are, and you know what we want you to be able to do tonight, and this and that. And our kids are motivated by that. They don't want to let those older kids down, or they don't want to let them and their legacy down based on not going out there and putting together a pretty good performance. So I think our alums and the guys that have played in the program prior to this particular team are the ones that are helping us as the coaching staff keep our kids prepared and ready to go.
Hey, Coach, I'm going to play a game with you now. I'm going to name 4. I'm just going to say 4 first names and just tell me what pops into your head, the adjectives, okay?
Right.
First one, Caleb.
Patient. Caleb, super. You just want one word? Patient.
Yeah. What couple? Frankie.
Resilient. Frankie Edwards is. Yep. I mean, he had the pick at the end of the Mater Dei game that kind of sealed. Obviously, the sealed the shutout.
Yep.
Resilient. That guy's resilient.
Cameron.
Beast. I mean, he's Derrick Henry 2.0. He's a big physical back, and people make the business decisions when he's coming through the hole.
And the last one, this kid had a phenomenal weekend. Not only did his team beat Mater Dei, his rival, but where he's going to college, beat USC, Kingston.
Right. A leader. He's a silent leader. He's kind of the glue. He's the nucleus of this football team. He's so well respected, by all of the kids in our program, all of the community members, both, past and present. The guy is a rock star. I mean, he's an absolute delight to be around. He's one of my favorite people that I've ever had an opportunity to coach in my 21 years as a head coach. He's going to Notre Dame, which that's, my kind of excitement. See him go to a Catholic school and do well for that university, and to know what a degree from the University of Notre Dame is going to do for him and the rest of his life. I mean, he's a legend. He's a leader. He's going to be one of the strongest individuals that has set a legacy in our program. And he's a 4-year starter. I mean, there are not too many guys. He's a unicorn. Not too many guys like that come through during a coaching career.
Yep.
Joe, I've got a question for you along those same lines. I'm going to throw 2 words out there, and you tell me the word that pops in your head. Okay. Jason Negro.
Solid, man. Just solid. I mean, I have 400 clients around America that I do scheduling for and games for. He's gets back to you like last night. He probably got 300 congrats text messages. I got one back. He's that type of guy, just a good guy. No, that's it. I mean, he's one of the best in the game. And again, I deal with over 400 head coaches. He's definitely part of my Mount Rushmore.
The reason I asked that question, Coach, is because I get the feeling, I've met you a couple times now. We've had some pretty good conversations, but I was thinking as Joe was asking you to describe those players, and I had him to describe you, what really stands out is relationship building. It just seems like you really value relationships. You think that's why your players really will run through a brick wall for you?
I think so, without question. I mean, I learned something when I first started at Bosco back in 2010. I had a president that was a Bosco grad, and he came in at the same year that I did. His name was Paula Scala. And, I really valued his leadership and what he was trying to do with our school and making it more like a collegiate type model, a true collegiate preparatory institution. And one of the phrases that he used all the time that I really stuck with me, and it kind of aligned with my vision and my philosophy as a head coach, is he said, you need to invest in human capital. And that goes back to what you're saying. And part of that is building relationships, and I think that if you can be kind and you can build relationships and you can utilize the skill sets of the most talented people around you, you're going to be in a position to be super successful. And that's basically what I've done at Bosco is I've surrounded myself with the most elite, talented minds in the game of high school football that I can potentially work with, and I let them go do their job and I let them be great. And basically what I've done is I've put a vision together. We got a strong mission statement, and we say, listen, we're going to go out there and provide great experiences for young people, and we're going to allow them to use the platform that we have at St. John Bosco to hope develop their necessary skill sets that they're going to need for the next phase of their life, which is to be successful in college. And the best way to be able to do that is to have people who are sharing that same mindset and sharing that same vision and going out there and being able to execute it. And that's it. I mean, the reason why we get 3/4 of the non-league schedule is because of the relationship that I have with Joe. And Joe goes and does work for people that he cares about. So he's going to hustle and he's going to go out there and try to we lost a game in midsummer when we had a team from Miami back out, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And Joe found me Friendship Academy. And now I got Mike Hunter, who's a great dude, came out there and he's playing really good football right now. So, I mean, those guys are so talented, and it's because they trusted Joe. Joe trusted me. And then we got this relationship. Now I've got a new friend in Mike Hunter, who's the head coach at Friendship Academy. And I would never have that if I didn't have a relationship with Joe, or if I never would text him back when he would say congratulations. So human capital, that's human if you want to be successful, empower people to go out there and do their job and put in some human capital.
Yep.
Invest.
I got a question for you. Tell me about the future of the Trinity League. Everybody always talks about the top two teams. I just got a call from Olu. They want to start working with me. They want to start playing some out-of-state big-time games. Tell me the future of Trinity League just in general for those who aren't familiar with it.
Well, I think that it's only going to continue to get better. I mean, we have 4 new head coaches in the Trinity League this year, and that's quite a big turnover when you think about it. I mean, we are truly the SEC of high school football. There are some really good leagues out there. There's the league in New Jersey, the Catholic School League there, and there's the Catholic School, the DC, Maryland area. Those guys do a great job.
And in Cincinnati, the Greater Catholic League is very good too.
Without question. I mean, and then you got to add Maslin in there in Ohio. So there's a lot of really good conferences. But if you talk about our conference, as a standalone, it's pretty elite. You take us and Mater Dei, what we've been able to accomplish. Servite 2 years ago beat us in the semis, played Mater Dei in the finals, and their quarterback was Noah Fafita, who is now the starter at Arizona and just beat Washington State last night, who was 13th in the country. So we got really good football that's played out of our league. But I think if the schools are patient and allow these young new coaches to be able to come in and establish a program, Coach Sherman is at Orange Lutheran. He's no dummy. He's saying, well, what is Mater Dei and Bosco doing, and how can I do it to be able to compete with them, or to be able to try to attract the necessary kids that it's going to take to be a part of your program to elevate your performance level. And I think if all of the teams kind of do that, the future of our league is super bright. I love it when the league is competitive. I like it when everybody is battling each other and trying to get better and trying to continue to raise the bar. And if you do that, it's only going to make you or force you to go out there and do better for yourself. Improve your offseason, improve your non-league schedule, go out there and do these things that are going to help elevate your program. So the future is super bright for our league. I really like the way that the league is playing out this year. Obviously, we're at the top of it. So naturally, I'm going to be happy about that. But I think there's others behind us that are quickly catching us.
Hey, Coach, when you and I went to lunch with Coach Rollinson, a couple of years ago. We
Nobody
all met.
would believe that, by the way.
Huh?
I said nobody would believe that we went. All three of us went out.
Three of us went out. We had a great lunch. And I remember him, as you were telling me that story you just said now, how you want everybody working together, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I remember him telling me when there was a time not too long ago when you were dominating the conference.
Right.
And he came to you and said, what are you doing to be so successful? What do you think we should do to get there? I remember him telling me this story. I thought to myself, damn, he's known as the mentor, the godfather of coaching in that league. And there was a time when he saw what you were doing and how great it was doing, and he had to tweak his system.
Yeah, we talked. We had beaten them like 6 straight times from 2011 all the way through 2000. I think it was 15, and then they had beaten us in the league game in 16, and we beat them in the finals in at Anaheim Stadium in 16. So we had won 7 out of 8 matchups with them in a row or in that time period, and and it would look like we were going to continue to do that because we had some really good teams. And a lot of foundation guys coming up through the program where it was a consistently, top 5 team in the country. And I think what happened was Bruce was like, what are you doing? Bruce is a little bit old school. I mean, he is.
He talked about social media. He wasn't doing social media.
He didn't do social media. Yeah, he wasn't doing the hype videos and the things that the younger generation coach, or a guy like me was able to do or to go out. And then all of a sudden, this is a copycat league and it's a copycat profession. So go out there and seek out the people that are doing it the best and go try to model your program after them. Now, it's not like he was trying to be St. John Bosco. That's not what his goal was. But what he wanted to do is, in his own way, taking that Mater Dei legacy and that Mater Dei program that which he had built and was so prideful in. And how did I close that gap with St. John Bosco? Much like I had to do 3 years prior when I took over in 2010. How was I, going to close that gap to where Mater Dei was? Bosco hadn't made the playoffs 7 years prior to me getting there. That's a long stretch to not make the playoffs in Southern California in this Trinity League. So for us, it really meant a lot for me to kind of share some of the ideas and, maybe to a fault of my own, because now we're a little bit more competitive than I would hope it to be. But we're not going to have this rivalry if someone goes and has a 17, 18-year stretch where how is that a rivalry? Rivalries come because, teams are kind of bouncing back and forth and you never know who's going to win the game. What generates the excitement? Well, flipping a coin and saying who's going to win tonight. There was probably 90% of the people in that stadium on Friday night that didn't give us a chance or an opportunity that they thought we were going to win, except for those guys on the sideline and a bunch of people peppered up in the stands. But that's the reason why you play the game. And that's the reason why this rivalry is so competitive. And that's the reason why I love being a part of it. And I wouldn't change it. I want them to be great. I want the league to be great. And I want myself to be great. And the only way you're going to be great is surround yourself with greatness.
Coach, I think we can fairly say that you guys were the underdogs going into that Mater Dei game. You dominated that game. So because of the fashion and the way that you won, you're probably now considered, if not the favorite, one of the favorites to run the table the rest of the year. So that, in my mind, that would probably make you the hunted. Correct. Does your mentality change because you were hunting earlier in the season? Now you're being hunted. So does your preparation change? Does your mentality change? Does your communication with your players change? Or is everything still par for the course?
No, it's still par for the course. And, honestly, we have Kahuku to thank for that. I mean, they basically punched us in the teeth and said, wake up, Bosco, or, this is going to happen down the road at a time where we don't want it to happen. Luckily, that loss really didn't affect us other than, it's a loss, but I think you can grow and you can learn more from a loss than you can from a win. And that's the one thing when you're working with young people that you have to really guard against and you have to be, mindful of, because that's where their mindset is like, oh, it's just musical chairs. You knock off number one, you potentially become number one. Now you're unbeatable. Well, maybe that's the mentality Mater Dei had coming into our game. And that's the reason why they weren't as necessarily prepared as they needed to be. Who knows what the reasonings are? And, if I could figure it out, I'd write a book and I would probably retire because I'd have so much money. But, no, I think the mindset still has to be the same, Larry, is we need to make sure that we stay hungry. We have to continue to go hunt down some of those really good programs that are on the horizon. We got Jay Sarah next Friday night, more than capable of beating us if we don't play our type of football game. Orange Lutheran 2 weeks from there, more than capable of sneaking up and beating us. They have the talent, they have the coaching. Now it depends on how the environment is and how the game goes and the bouncing of the ball or the officials or whatever the case may be. Every time we take the field, we got to go take the approach. It's a nameless, faithless opponent, and we need to worry about ourselves. That's the way we're going to win a championship. That's the way, Larry, that we're going to run the table, is if we worry about St. John Bosco and we focus on ourselves internally. You start to worry about these other people, you start comparing scores. Now, all of a sudden, your mind, kind of drifts in a direction which is not going to keep you focused at the task at hand. And right now, for us, it's Jay Sarah. Mater Dei is behind us. I know that sounds crazy. We didn't do a whole lot of discussion over the weekend, on our prep work about Mater Dei. We watched the film to get the stats and things like that, put it in the can, and now we're going after Jay Sarah.
Hey, Larry, when I first texted him congratulations and he got back to me, I said, Coach, I texted back, our job's just got a hell of a lot harder to find your games. So we're already starting on 2024. Right. This morning, I sent out a scheduling alert to over 400 teams within my community. Of course, only like 1 or 2 got back to us so far.
You know what, Joe? You said it gets harder, and I agree with that. But I just wish more people out there would be willing to go out on a limb and try to compete with programs like ours. Well, we're beatable. It shows you right there what happened to us a couple weeks ago. Yep. We're a beatable football team. Nobody perished. Nobody was, airlifted out of a stadium, and nobody's feelings got hurt, about us not winning a football game. Yeah. We had to pick ourselves up, and we had to go through, and have a long flight back home and go through a long 2 weeks before our game. People need to have more faith and more trust in their abilities to be able to coach and their abilities to be able to prepare a football team to beat anybody on any given night. And I think that is an important lesson. I've been around for, like I said, as a head coach for 21 years. So I think I've developed enough of, equity in this job to be able to try to challenge people. And most people are going to say, oh, that makes sense because you got all the talented play. Well, evidently I didn't, or I'm not a very good coach because Kahuku put it on it. So, go figure.
So I make this point.
Go play people.
I make this point all the time, especially to the public programs who say public should only play publics, blah, blah, blah. I talk about how Centennial always competes with you guys. I talk about how Miami Central beat IMG last year. I talk about how Buford beat St. Francis this year game 1 when St. Francis was 100% healthy.
Right.
So public schools can compete with the elite privates. It's been proven. That's what we got to get over the hump. I have to be a salesman and get these gentlemen to believe themselves. States like Texas, Georgia, I need these people to think more outside of the box. Ohio, they got to start having more faith in themselves, and by them seeing you beat Mater Dei, seeing St. Francis lose, hopefully, the good thing for me is now your games got harder to schedule, and now St. Francis is going to get a lot easier because they're 2-5. So, but we all know in the end, everyone should be playing each other, and if you really want to be a national champ, you cannot avoid people. My hashtag, one of my hashtags is no cowards allowed. And nobody will ever end up number 1 in my poll who actively won't play somebody else or when given the opportunity. It's not going to happen.
No, Joe, listen. South Georgia is closer than St. Thomas Aquinas.
Joe and I are working on some areas for next year. We'll probably travel at least to the East Coast at least, or the South once. Yeah. We have to get a bulk of our games at home next year. So we want to welcome some people out to our stadium. The environment we had there Friday night was electric. It was amazing. I think you could ask all those people, kind of what environment that was like. We would love to go back down to Texas and play a Texas team. I'm certainly not opposed to doing that. It's a 2.5-hour flight to Dallas from LA. So for us to be able to go down there, there's such good people down there. They play great football, but they need to not be afraid of playing Catholic schools and things like that. where in Texas, it just happens to be flipped. If you were to ask the privates or the Catholic schools down in Texas, they'd be like, oh, the public schools reign supremacy here.
It's funny how schools with 7,000 students are afraid to play schools with 800 students.
I know.
But it happens. That's why I started this company, and ultimately it's going to get easier for everybody.
Right.
Well, Coach, this is my last question that I've got for the coach, Joe, and it's this. Coach, the last time we talked to you, I think I remember this correctly. Joe made the mistake of asking you to talk about some of the kids on your roster, and you took like 20 minutes and you talked about all these great players that you have on your roster, that kind of stuff. So I want to follow up on that question. We all know about the superstars that are supposed to perform well. Has there been a kid this year that has kind of exceeded expectations, or maybe ahead of schedule, that's pleasantly surprised you?
Oh man, I won't take 20 minutes for sure, because we've already been on for a long time here, but there's certainly so many players that have contributed to our record right now and played big roles in the game, on Friday night. I'm going to look, first of all, as a collective group. And I think the role players within our program, the special teams guys, the guys that, run the service and scout teams during the week, those guys that are just part of our program that aren't yet frontline starters, they should get the credit first, because they're the ones putting in the work, Monday through Thursday, and all that dirty work that goes into trying to prepare a football team. And they're the ones that are putting us in position by giving us great looks to be successful. So those guys have to be the starters. Super proud of my offensive line to this point. It's played really well. A tight end of ours didn't play football at Bosco last year as a junior, decided to just sit out, come back as a senior. He was a safety, and now he's a tight end. Will McKissick had a massive catch during the game, made some really good plays for us. Joe mentioned him earlier. Frankie Edwards, who had the one, interception, the one turnover in the game, waited his time. He was patient, is now a starter. Dylan Rickenbacker is a safety, another 4-year guy, that waited his turn, and now as a senior is getting a lot of run as a scholarship type performer. And then lastly, it starts with Caleb Sanchez, our quarterback. Caleb's been so phenomenal for us, and he's waited his time, and he's another 4-year Bosco Brave. He understands the brotherhood and the culture of our program, and good things happen to good people if you're willing to be patient, and things are going to pay off. And that's currently where all those guys were at. But I'm so proud of my entire roster, all the way down to the freshmen. They had a great week of preparation, and they took care of business. And we have a potential to, if we're fortunate enough over the next couple of weeks to win some ball games, we could be Trinity League champs at all 3 levels, and that would be pretty monumental.
Hey, Coach, two things. I remember, again, this week, I don't know if it was this weekend, but last time you played Mater Dei, regular season game was last year when I was there, and I spent all that time with you and your team. I remember during the game, your starter got hurt, and Caleb was thrown into the fire. Right. And look how long he's come, how far he's come in the last 365 days.
Oh, for sure. Last year, at the Santa Ana Bowl, Clarkson got hurt at halftime. We were down 7-0. Caleb actually came in the second half. Him and Cam Jones, made some plays on a drive, got us down there, tied the ball game. And then Mater Dei kicked a field goal midway through the fourth quarter to go up 10-7. This is the game that you were at. You shadowed our program. That ball game with a backup quarterback and then our best wide receiver, DeAndre Moore, who's now at Texas, was out of the game at halftime as well. We had some limited weapons going in to the second half of that football game that hadn't put in a bunch of work during the week to prepare for that, great Mater Dei defense. And we lost. We ended up losing that game. And it put us in position to now we were having to go back to be the hunter and going to try to track them down. And we were able to do that in the Rose Bowl. And, that's the fear that I have. It's like, you almost like, oh man, we won the league game. If you're lucky enough to get to them the second time, man, it's going to be so much harder to beat them the second time. But hey, I tell you what, if you take the game by game approach, we can control the things that we can control. And right now that's this moment. We're going to take it. We're going to can it, put it behind us, and try to move on. And we're going to look, if, like I said, we're lucky enough, and so are they, to get to us a second time at some point during the playoffs. We're going to look at it as an isolated event, an isolated game, approach it that way, and hopefully good things happen for us.
The second thing I wanted to bring up was when we were, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but me and one of your biggest fans and most recognized father alums, Big Dave, we spent a lot of time at the hotel bar.
Right.
And he kept telling me about this kid. And I didn't really remember him until last night. Epi Sid in LA.
Yeah.
He had a huge sack last night. And I want to compliment Big Dave. You told me so, buddy, and it happened.
Yeah, Epi's a great player. He's a junior defensive end for us, plays in a bunch of our packages. He's got a relentless motor. He's a long, lanky guy. He's got, wingspan that's big. He's explosive. He's fast. He's really starting to gain a lot of confidence. He's being very coachable, over the last, 6 or 7 weeks. That's putting him in position to be successful. He's hitting the weight room hard. And, and if you put in that type of work, you can go through, the progression of a season and play at a high level. And Dave's not wrong. Epi's doing a great job, along with some other guys that are starting to round into shape as we get into the most critical time of the season. And that's the reason why I say if we continue to trend, in this direction, it's scary to see how good we can potentially be.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us tonight on nationalhsfb.com. Listen, you guys are doing some great things out there. Congratulations on the big win. You got a couple more weeks left in the regular season, then you hit the playoffs. So best of luck to you and your Braves for the rest of the year.
Thanks a lot, Larry. I appreciate it. And again, thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Guys, if y'all have enjoyed this conversation, make sure you check out our website, nationalhsfb.com, to join us for this national discussion on all things high school football. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later.